In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
We are back. You're listening to the Sonya Dunn Show. We have a special guest in the studio today, Michel Wright. If you don't know her, you do know her. She is an Emmy Award-winning media personality in the music industry. Also, she's here locally on the District Cable Network's 202 here in the DC area. Michelle, thank you for being on our show today.
Oh, thank you. This is a little bit different. I'm on the other side.
You are on the other side. When's the last time someone's interviewed you?
I can't even remember.
Really?
I really can't even remember.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and just sharing from the other side of the aisle, should I say, lack of better word. So,
thank you. Yeah. It's my absolute pleasure. I remember when you were on our show, the 202.
Yes.
And so to return the favor, it was just... I had to do it.
Thank you.
And I get to see you in person, so that's pretty awesome, too.
So you grew up here in the D.C. area, or no?
Yeah, I grew up in the area.
Okay.
Duke Ellington Performing Arts.
Oh, wow.
My high school. I was a theater dance major. And my dad really wanted me to be an attorney. So that's why I studied political science in college. I thought I was going to go in that direction, but I detoured again. I had to come back to entertainment, music, all of that in some way. And, I'm just pretty lucky.
So did it take a while for you to find your place in media, or did you just know right away it was just being a person who goes out and seeks knowledge from others and share it on the airwaves?
Well, I was always, seeking knowledge. I have this, as one of my mentors told me, a youthful curiosity that he suggested I never let go. But I didn't always know that I wanted to do or was going to do radio. Again, I thought I was going to be an attorney because my dad thought I would be a great attorney. And he was with the Department of Justice for many years. He just thought I had the kind of mind. He's like, you would be a great attorney. But I was always artsy and quirky. And, just hearing music in my head on my own and just didn't care. I would dance if I want to. So I was just always that kind of an individual and just very artistic. I wrote a lot. I was in very special and advanced writing programs.
Yeah.
Wrote a couple of books as a child. They got published, just on and on and on. So when I was writing for a small newspaper in Columbia, Maryland, it's called the Columbia Flyer. This was in, I think it was 1990, that I heard this guy named Albie D on a radio station in Washington, D.C., and he went, it's me, it's Albie D rocking this thing so viciously. And you know how they say you get something when you get it? You have your aha when you have your aha.
Right.
So I grew up listening to Donnie Simpson, who mentored and advised me, and we actually got to work together during my career. But I grew up listening to Donnie Simpson, but he was always just so smooth, so cool, and it made me think of the pages of Ebony magazine. And I said, well, I'm not that. I could never be that. So I didn't think or even consider that I would do want to do. I really didn't, because, again, I was always quirky and just, artsy, and he was just smooth and cool. And then everyone on his station, I would listen to him and Candy Shannon. They were all just smooth and cool. And so I just never thought about it. But I heard this guy, Albie, and it was just like, just fun, crazy, just an outburst. And sometimes that's how I am. That's how my personality can be. Sometimes I can be smooth too, but sometimes just like, hey, yeah. And I said I wanted to do that. I started calling this guy on the request line.
Really?
And I became his phone friend. And I asked him questions about what he did. And I learned what a program director was and what a music director was. And so when I got interested in getting into radio, I would reach out to people at radio stations, and they all told me no.
Was it because you weren't a certain gender And because there weren't a lot of female radio personalities.
Right.
Especially when I was growing up.
Well, I would say, I mean, it was because I didn't have any experience for one, so who's gonna, consider, me? But also because, I don't know, it just wasn't time, and they would all suggest the same thing. Go to Biloxi, Mississippi, and work for a few years and whatever. But I was like, nah, I want my mom to be able to hear me if I get on the radio.
Right.
So I was determined to figure it out. But being a middle child, I'm always one to just try to figure it out.
So you started out writing.
Mm-hmm.
You went to an art high school.
Yeah.
High school for the arts.
Yes.
Like the fame of DC, shall we say. So you are actually a creative. You're not a radio personality. You're not a dancer. You're just a creative.
Exactly. Didn't study communications and journalism. Again, political science.
Yeah.
But I just have always been a creative person. I would, when the other kids were outside playing or whatever, I was in the house reading or listening to music and reading the liner notes on the back of albums.
Really?
Yeah.
So I read somewhere that you're also a singer. So do you sing?
Well, I sang and rapped and wrote music before.
You're just a creator. You just dabbed into everything. As far as I've done the same. As far as when I've had never, as far as when I don't have a media outlet, I create in other areas like woodwork or cooking because I just got to create, that type of thing. So
you like to cook too? I like to cook.
Yeah, I like to cook. So I have to be inspired to cook. So
okay.
My family doesn't like me very much, so
wow.
So yeah.
I mean, we've had a couple of warm days, but when it's cold, I like to cook. I like to throw things in the crock pot and let it do its thing.
Yes, I'm a crock pot sister too. So, well, we're gonna have to take a break, Michelle. We're gonna have to take a break, but when we get back, I want to talk to you about your journey, your continuous journey in radio.
Okay.
Because it has splintered into different paths.
Yes, ma'am.
For you.
Yep.
I'm Sonya Dunn. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
DC Radio, where you can hear district creatives with Sevi Charisse.
One of the conversations that we have on the show is how to monetize your creative gifts and abilities.
Hearing the Council with Josh Gibson.
You'll learn about policy, learn about people, learn about history, and learn about the institution.
Wit and Reason with Dr. Alexis Moreno.
It seems like there's still a lot of confusion and misunderstanding surrounding the concept of love, so let's break it down.
Rating the Crates with John Avery.
You're raiding the crates on DC Radio, and we're just getting started. So let's kick this party into high gear.
And Rememories for Seniors with Elliot Michael Gold.
The people we love and admire and who set the beat and the music of our lives.
DC Radio, 96.3 and DCRadio.gov. In DC, for DC.
We are back with our guest, Michel Wright, who is the radio personality on so many different platforms. She's the voice of Cafe Mocha Radio. She's also has her own show on SiriusXM, The Sweet Spot. She's even the voice on the classical music channel for SiriusXM. And that's just to name a few. This is your central home for creating is the radio industry, correct?
Yes, pretty much. And I'm here between here and New York.
Yeah. So you told us about one setback, which was the doors not just opening up when you first wanted to go in. Mm-hmm. How difficult of a journey was it to finally get that break for yourself?
Well, I think, and this is interesting because recently Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are on a promo tour for the upcoming Bad Boys 3.
Yes.
And Will Smith said something that I just believe it's so true. He said, believing in yourself can be lonely and frustrating and just so many things. It's hard to get someone else to believe in you. So you've got to believe in you and stick it out, Essentially, that's what he said. And so in believing in myself, it was always a challenge. And of course, in radio and things like this, you have to be self-motivated anyway. So I was always, having to pump myself up.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest ways to pump yourself up is to listen to music. So music has always been a part of my life anyway, and on those tough days, you put on LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years, or whatever, because then also I'll throw on some Kirk Franklin, melodies from heaven rained out on me. But, the music will pump me up and, also I'm of strong faith, and I pray and try to be grounded and centered. But, radio industry, media, it can be a tough business.
It is a tough business.
Anything that has aesthetics involved,
yes,
I believe, can be tough, especially for women, because, of course, everything has a shelf life, and our shelf life is shorter as women.
As women, yes.
So you've got to find ways to maneuver and figure out how to do what you love to do.
It's funny you say that, as far as, because it's always about figuring out how to keep yourself motivated. I think that as the true entrepreneurs, which are creatives, I think creatives are entrepreneurs in themselves, and it's about them trying to figure out how to understand their business of being in whatever creative field they are. And sometimes we get off track as far as not understanding the business side of what you do, so that you can understand how to market yourself and how to figure out these different channels to maybe for people to see what you do and so forth like that. You seem like you've done that for yourself.
Well, one of the things that served me well is getting in trouble.
You're going to have to explain that.
Getting in trouble. Because, not that I'm a rabble-rouser. I'm an adventurer.
Gotcha.
And, I am of the philosophy, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. People are ready to say no anyway, and why give them another opportunity to say no by saying, can I? Just try it, do it, So I would get in trouble a lot. So I remember at PGC when I was at 95.5 in D.C., and those were some awesome times of my life. You had, again, a man who mentored and taught me so much, Donnie Simpson in the morning. I followed Donnie middays, and then Big Tigger was afternoon. So, we had this little trifecta thing going.
Yeah.
And I remember first hearing about satellite radio. And one of the things I'm also curious about, and I'm curious about anything and everything, but I love technology. And I'd heard about this satellite radio thing, and I thought it was the coolest thing because, years ago you had AM radio that was popular. Then you had the introduction of FM.
Yeah.
And then satellite here before the merger in D.C., they called it XM. And I said, oh, that's so cool. And I want to know about it. So I knew some people over there. And when I got off the air at PGC and after I finished my production and things like that, I would go over there just to hang out. I said, please let me come over. And I would come over because I was just curious. I wanted to learn stuff. And they were live all over the country.
Yes.
And so that was just fascinating to me. And so I'd walk in the studio and someone would be live, one of my friends, and he'd say, Michelle, what's happening? I was like, well, let me tell you what's happening. I just started going and going and going. And that actually created my opportunity to come over to XM. And so when I first started going over there, and they asked, well, could you fill in? Could you work during the holidays, whatever? And I'm like, yeah. And I remember my bosses at WPGC is like, you can't do that.
Conflict of interest and all that.
Well,
so they thought.
non-compete rules and things like that. Yeah. But at the time, because terrestrial radio didn't think satellite radio was a thing, satellite radio was not outlined in our contracts to be included in the non-compete clause. So I asked my agency about that because I thought that, satellite radio didn't count. And my agency had the attorneys look at it, and they agreed. I got in a little bit of trouble, but I was able to do satellite radio on the weekends at the same time that I was doing terrestrial radio.
Wow.
So I got in a little trouble, but I learned a lesson about doing other things and trying things.
So you don't believe in the word no?
Well, not that I don't believe in it, because I have to set boundaries. So I have to say no sometimes. But, when I want to try something, to experience something, because I really want to experience as much as I can in this life, and everything that we do is just going to be an oath of what there is to experience and explore.
Yeah.
So if I know that there's a high likelihood of being told no. So again, I try to create an environment so that I get a yes, or I get a, well, let's try.
We're going to have to take a break.
Okay.
We're here with Michel Wright, and you're listening to the Sonya Dunn Show. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
What if you could turn on the radio in Washington, D.C. and be in the know, in the flow, and up to date on all that makes the district great? Get ready for DC Radio on 96.3 HD4, where the city comes alive. We'll be playing music featuring DC area artists, all the interviews with people who make a difference in the district, entertainment, news, local artists, your connection to everything Washington, D.C. From Washington, D.C. and for Washington, D.C. All the majesty, diversity, vibrancy, and culture of D.C. on the air 24/7, 365. Our people. From our monuments to our neighborhoods, all 8 wards. We'll be highlighting what the mayor is doing and what's going on in city council. We'll be reaching out to seniors and the youth. That's what D.C. is all about. From D.C. From D.C. For D.C. For D.C. DC Radio 96.3 HD4, Washington.
You're listening to the Sonya Dunn Show. We have with us in our studio Michel Wright, who is the media personality. I wouldn't say radio, it's media personality, Emmy Award-winning media personality, Michel Wright, in our studio today. You're a hoot.
Thank you. While I'm here in the facilities in the studio of DC Radio, I really have to thank Max Myrick, who is just such a good guy and a good person to me. And I've got to thank director Angie Gates, who, as a matter of fact, came to me to bring me on to be the co-host of the 202 TV show. So if it wasn't for Angie Gates, I wouldn't even be able to be here to do that show. And of course, the mayor of our city for just believing in the creatives and supporting us so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, was this your first TV gig, the 202?
No. As a matter of fact, I did a TV show for BET back in the day. I was on the radio at WPGC, and a producer used to listen to me and called and said, "We think you'd be fun for this TV show." And I said, okay. And they had me over. I screen tested, and I was a part of a show with some local comedians. Pierre, who did the movie Babs. Just a lot of the local comedians. I was a part of the show.
Do you remember the name of the show?
The show was called Tell Me Something Good on BET.
Tell Me Something Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to pull that out.
It was a short game show.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great
show.
Yeah, it was a game show.
Oh, wow.
That was my first BET show, and I did some fill-in stuff and guesting, I think, with Donnie. And then I did a couple of spots here and there, and I've done some commercials. But then one of the first shows I got that I was a producer and host, I got a grant from the city of Virginia, the Commonwealth, and I got to create a show. So I created a live hour-long evening talk show called 8101 with Michel Wright.
Really?
Because they called me to host a video show called MHZ Urban.
Okay.
And so I hosted the video show, and then they told me about this grant, and they said, we need to create a show. So I created this talk show.
Yeah.
And my friend Marcus Johnson, who's been my friend for years, He was so gracious. He had his Marcus Johnson band as my house band.
Get out
Because it was like a real
Like
live
a-
Hollywood show.
Yeah, like
so I had the house band. I
like
came
Tonight
out.
Show and
Yep,
all that
I did
good
a
stuff.
monologue.
Get outta
I had a
here.
sofa. I had my cousin who owns Henry Soul Cafe. They catered, and so people came on, and they
Yeah.
were felt like and treated like big superstars. And it was a live to air show, not pre-taped. We were live. And the very first show that I did, actually, I said that I could get the mayor of D.C., who was at the time Mr. Anthony Williams.
Okay.
I said I could get him to be on the show, and I said I could get Donnie Simpson, who I was working with at PGC, on the show, because it was around 2004 or 5 or something.
Okay.
And they were like, "Can you?" I said, "Yeah." The Mayor Tony Williams, drove himself out to the studios at Virginia and was a guest on the show and laid out the plan for Nats Park, baseball in D.C., everything back then.
Wow.
And to see it all come in true fruition
Yeah.
today is just so amazing to me. And Donnie came on, and it just was great. It was a great time. So that was the first big show I did. I produced and I hosted the show by myself.
So do you like TV versus radio or radio versus TV? Which one wins out in your heart?
In my heart, today and living in today's time, they are one and the same.
Okay.
There is no difference.
You are right about that.
Yeah.
You are right.
Yeah, because everything has a visual aspect now. You know, you're on TV now. You got cameras here in the studio as you're
Yes.
sitting, recording this audio. So they're all one and the same, to me. And I believe radio, especially live radio, because you have to operate just impetuously, be on your feet, on your toes.
Yep.
That has helped me to do TV because, you got to just think. And
Yeah.
when you're talking to someone, and I love talking to people, so.
So then who inspires you?
Everyone.
In the industry? Is there you've mentioned Donnie, of course. But has there been someone else that's been pinnacle in your development?
Well,
in the
everyone.
industry?
I watch and
Yeah.
study.
I know when you're in
many.
as far as when you do what you do as a media personality, you meet so many different people. So
Yeah.
it's so hard to just pinpoint one person.
Yeah, and often for me, it's the unsung heroes, the people who are not superstars. Like one of my colleagues, her name is Joni. I work with her at SiriusXM, and she is an amazingly gifted voiceover artist. She's done cartoons and video games, and she is a producer, and she is one of the only female producers over at XM. You go to rows and rows of rooms where you see these producers of the content there and the imaging, and they're males. And she's a woman that does that. And, I appreciate what she does. She fires me up and inspires me when I see her. Women like you doing this. Director Angie Gates is a great example.
Yes, she is.
Because as a woman, it is tough to lead, but we are born fierce leaders, girl.
We are. We're born to lead. Yes, absolutely. You have to. Yeah. I got to ask you this question.
Okay.
Since you're in the music industry, are there any songs that speak to your life's journey?
Oh, well, on the real,
Yes.
almost every Mary J. Blige album that was ever made. I gotta tell you the truth. Mary J. Blige, my life. Lord. I just want to be happy. Oh, Lord. No more drama. Lord. Every single Mary
Real
J.
love.
Blige. Yes. Oh, my goodness. Mary J. Blige, again, I love Kirk Franklin, his music. He just gets me fired up. And I throw on some DC Go-Go. Got to hit Backyard Band, crank it a little bit, get in that pocket. Thank you, Sonya Dunn.
We're running out of time, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're going to have to come back on.
Okay.
Especially because my wheelhouse is just content creating, period. But mainly films, and it's the Oscar season time, and they just did the nominations today. So
absolutely,
I'm gonna have to bring you on, and you can just give me some of your takes on certain things when we come back.
Anytime. My social media, Ms. Michel Wright, all platforms, MSMICHELWRIGHT.
Say that again. One more time.
MSMICHELWRIGHT. Ms. Michel Wright. Michelle, 1E, 1L.
1E, 1L. You're listening to Sonya Dunn. We'll be right back right after this.
In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.